Greetings. This is Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and today is Sunday, July 30th, 2023. This is a question and answer session. I had not planned on doing a Q&A anytime soon, but I did get quite a few notes in, and I think it would be a good idea to answer these sooner rather than later. And one was actually, well, a couple were quite surprising, and one does seem to be kind of important. So let me just get on with it here. First, the thanks to the people that appreciated the UFO committee briefing. As you know, last Wednesday there was a congressional subcommittee hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the modern politically correct way of saying UFOs and ETs. Again, that was designed for people who are paid subscribers. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because a couple of people dropped me notes complaining. Well, I'm very sorry about that, but in some ways I'm not sorry. The thing is that there are a few people that are donating money on a monthly or yearly basis to support this endeavor. And I think it's only fair that I occasionally do something, or maybe regularly do something for them specifically. If you're a paid subscriber, you will get special reports, and that was one of them, and there's some work that went into that. But just about everything else, if you're a subscriber, you'll get the poetry, you'll get the stories I do, and you'll get some other things. But it's only fair that people who do support the endeavor get something special as well. And I would hope that more people would contribute. It's $5 a month, $50 a year, which is not an awful lot of money, and it would really help. But thanks again to everyone else who really enjoyed the briefing I did, and I'm looking forward to doing more of those. Now, there was a very interesting thing that a question that someone sent in that really just came out of left field, and it really took me very much by surprise. And that was a question, are you going to write a book on writing haiku? And wow, I have never, ever considered that. Never once entered my mind. I have been asked by people to consider writing a book of haiku or a photo book or a book of my photography, but I think coffee table books are not exactly the most profitable of endeavors. People think, oh, that's nice, and then they toss it on their shelf or toss it off into a coffee table someplace where it just disappears. But writing a book about writing haiku, I started thinking about that and said, I could probably do that. And it would be a lot more involved. It would be somewhat autobiographical, since I did study this while I was in Japan. There's a lot of good stories there, but this just goes to show you that if you're open to hearing from people, you'll get something coming your way that you've never thought of. And I never thought about writing a book on haiku. So I want to say thank you very much to the individual who sent me that note. I'm not using names at this point. I don't think it's necessary, but you know who you are. And I want to thank you for that, because it's something I am going to seriously look at and consider. And I've already started taking notes. It's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it's something that It may be something that I could do. Okay. Now, the other one, I was expecting to get some answers, some people interested in photography. I do have a few, but the one question that people started asking about was sleep apnea. Now, I mentioned that somewhat in passing with my last Q&A, and it's a problem I suffer from. And I think it might be a good idea if I explain my own story so that other people might be encouraged and get treatment for it or support people that have it. Just in interest and full disclosure, if I ever do win the lottery or make a lot of money again or become wealthy again, I will definitely be pushing charities or even helping establish a few to treat sleep apnea. What sleep apnea is a condition where you stop breathing or you wake up continuously while you're asleep in the middle of the night. Now, I'm going to give you some background here. This is going to take a bit to explain, but I think you need to know where I'm coming from with it. Because recently I've been very much debilitated by it. And it's reversible in my case as soon as I get an operation, which is proving to be a bit of a challenge. But let me just tell you the history of it. I moved back from Japan to the United States in 2009, and shortly thereafter, let's just say people who would know were complaining of snoring while I was sleeping. And I went to a hospital in Washington, D.C., where I was living at the time, and I talked to the doctor, and he basically said to get a special type of shirt where you can put a tennis ball in the back so you won't sleep on your back, so you should be fine. Well, I didn't think that was a good idea. Anyways, I started doing research, and I learned about this thing called sleep apnea. I did not take it seriously. I did have a sleep study done where at the time, which was about 2011 maybe, 2011, 2012, I did have a sleep study, and it was considered minor at the time, minor sleep apnea. I was waking up every so often, more than most people would, and I would stop breathing for longer periods of time. But I wasn't, and the doctor at the time said, well, you might have to wear a machine. I said, what is that? He said, something called a CPAP machine. It's a mask, and it's hooked to a compressor, and it forces air into your lungs while you're asleep. And I said, there's no way I'm ever going to do that. Well, I guess I was too macho for it or something, or at least I thought so. And what happened was I let it go, and it started to get worse. I didn't know that, but it started to get worse, and I won't go into all the personal details, but it did cause some serious trouble in my personal life. It's the way it is. Then I got into the insurance business. I was involved with several different things, but in 2015, my life went through a lot of personal changes, and I had to come up with a new career. I decided to get into insurance. And I went to go work for a major insurance company. And while I was on a sales call with my boss, who I'm still very good friends with, he's a wonderful man, and we were on a sales call with a client. And the client was mentioning he had sleep apnea, and it became part of the discussion, and I pricked my ears up. I didn't talk about it at the time, but afterwards, when we left the client's home, I was asking my boss, I said, well, what about sleep apnea? And he started explaining it. He told me that the number one cause of death with sleep apnea is automobile accidents. And I was mortified, and I said, what? He said, people with very advanced sleep apnea, they will zone out. They won't fall asleep, but they zone out. They'll crash their cars and kill themselves, other people. And I started to think, wow. And I told him, I says, well, I have sleep apnea. And he gave me a look and said, you better take care of it. And I did some research immediately. I got some information. Long story short, I went and got a detailed sleep study, and it turned out that I was waking up 47 times an hour. If you consider there's 60 minutes in an hour, that's quite a bit. I had stopped breathing quite a bit. I forget how much. And after the detailed sleep study, which is where you go to a hospital and they watch you sleep, they wire you up with electrodes and everything, and they watch you sleep, and then they do a complete assessment of exactly what's wrong with you, your oxygen levels, everything. So then I went to a company, and I got fitted up with a CPAP machine. And when I went in there, and the lady who was in charge of my account, she was very gracious and very kind. She also suffered from sleep apnea, which is why she got into the business. And I asked her, I said, well, what happened to people before these machines came out? And by the way, CPAP machines started to come out in the early 1980s. And she said, oh, they died. That's what she said. They died. They had heart attacks or strokes while they were asleep, and they just died. Whoa. Well, I started using a machine back then. And I got used to it, and I started sleeping really well. Anyways, long story short, or long story longer, I began to do more research, and I found out there was a clinic in Alexandria, Virginia, not too far from where I was living, that specialized in surgery to get rid of this. And I had gone in to meet one of their doctors, I think about 2016, maybe 2016, 2017. They explained how it all worked, and they talked about the risk of infection, and I decided against it at that point. I went back to the clinic in 2019, partially because I had a new job with a real big company, and I was starting to make a lot of money, and I thought, maybe I should go back and revisit this. So I did, and I met another doctor, and he was, it turns out, one of the top surgeons in the field, and a very gracious man, and explained everything to me. And lo and behold, I decided, well, I'm going to get the surgery because I think this is curable. I ended up doing that in May of 2020. It was delayed quite a bit because of COVID, but I did go in, get the surgery, and there was a lot of stuff done to my system. I had a deviated septum, if you know what that was. There was some stuff, there was a lot of work done, including an implant that was put in my neck. And I went back for another sleep study. It turns out I was waking up only 4 times an hour. I didn't need the CPAP machine anymore. I was cured. Well, I could talk about this for probably a couple of hours, and I don't think you want to hear the whole story. But what happened is, after I had the operation, I had to return to work. I was working in security. During the COVID period, a lot of us had to take on different jobs, and I got into the field of armed security to make extra money from the insurance business I was in. That was COVID really almost wiped out a lot. It wiped out a lot of people, almost wiped me out. But what happened is I had to wear a mask. And there was a healing wound on my neck. And what apparently happened was a very serious infection of a bacteria called Streptococcus aureus, which most people have in their upper respiratory tract. So because I had to wear a COVID mask at work, even though I thought it was silly, but I had to, I was required to by regulation and the rules at the time, I gave myself a very nasty infection in the neck, which was not fun. And I won't gross you out, but let's just say that Band-Aids weren't useful because they had to be replaced too often. I fought that for 9 months. Had to have a couple of operations to clean things up. It was a very, very messy situation, but I did not want to reverse the operation. I didn't want to go in and tamper with anything because I was sleeping so well. Finally, circumstances happened so that in March of 2021, I did have to go in, and there was an operation that was designed to take out the implant that was in there. The bacteria was hiding in that, and it started to reverse itself. And it was really a horrible experience, I can tell you, to have a chronic condition cured and then have it reintroduced 9 months later. And supposedly I'm one of the few people that had the misfortune of having that sort of infection, so that the operation had to be reversed. Okay, so I went back to using the CPAP machine, another one of life's blows, and the decision was made at some point to maybe have the operation again, but I wasn't really sure if that was ever going to happen. Anyway, I didn't know this, but the apnea was getting worse. The CPAP machine wasn't as effective as it should have been, to the point where I started zoning out quite a bit. Zoning out does not mean falling asleep. It means that you're going into a state of waking consciousness. And this can be very dangerous if you drive. And if you're doing security work overnight, you can zone out and suddenly black out and you're not doing your job. So unfortunately in March, I had to leave my position at a company I was working at. And I was pretty good at what I did. I actually enjoyed the work quite a bit, but I had to leave. And it was a very lucrative income, and I did miss it. Now, what's happening is last time I had a at-home sleep study, it turns out that at times I stopped breathing for more than 2 minutes at a time. Okay? That's a long time. Oxygen gets cut off to your brain, and sometimes the CPAP machine doesn't work as well as it should. This is what I've been fighting lately, and this is one of the reasons I've gotten back into writing and doing these podcasts and things such as that to keep myself active. I'm very hopeful that I'll be able to have this operation again in the near future. The health insurance I have doesn't cover it. I can get into a long rant about health insurance in this country, but I won't do it right now. But what I'm saying is that this is a very, very serious condition, and it can exhaust you. It can tire you out. It can take years off your life. And I have met so many people who did what I did, and they didn't get treatment. Now, no amount of treatment could have changed anything. This would have continued. The only thing was the operation had to be reversed. And I want to have that operation again. And that is not an inexpensive item. But the reason I'm talking about this is because several of you contacted me saying that you have sleep apnea as well. This is a very serious condition with many, many people in the United States and probably around the world, I imagine. It's something that is serious, and it can be debilitating, and it can kill you. You can die of a stroke. You can die of a heart attack. Your brain, you lose your cognitive ability. I'm still very in good shape compared to other people. But if you do research on this, you'll see what a debilitating condition it can be. Now, I'm very lucky that mine is reversible. If I'm able to get this operation, I'll go back to being my big, strong self. And I really, really, really miss being as healthy as I could be. So for those of you who've asked, if you have sleep apnea, get treatment for it. Do not be ashamed of using the machine. And if you can get the operation, do that as well. Just don't wear a COVID mask like I did. So that's what I've had to deal with the last few years. Some friends put a GoFundMe together to raise money for my operation. If you type my name in at GoFundMe, you'll find it. But I'm looking at other sources for financing this. I'm hopeful. I do want to go back to being healthy again, and I do want to go back to being as productive as I'm used to being. I want to just also let you know that if you know somebody who has sleep apnea, if you work with someone who has sleep apnea, do your very best to tell them how serious it is, because I think most of the people I meet who have sleep apnea, they don't have a CPAP machine. They just won't take it they won't use it. They won't get treatment. They won't, get an operation or something. Do your best to educate them. I'm very fortunate compared to many people. There's people out there who get killed driving a car, and if you suddenly zone out for 5 or 10 minutes going 70 miles an hour down a highway, it's not going to end well. So that's what I wanted to pass on to you, my little sleep apnea story. It's very private in many ways. It's very personal, but I think I need to share it with people that are asking. It is a serious condition, and it's one that has affected my life negatively in many ways. It needs to be addressed in this country, I think far more seriously than it is. That being said, I'm still doing quite a bit of work here. The Aurelian column is growing, not as quickly as I'd like. I don't have as many paid subscribers as I'd like, but I am getting a lot of very, very good feedback on the poetry, mixing it with current affairs. And I'm really excited about this idea about writing a book about writing haiku. That was the bright light of my week. So I don't know how that'll go. I don't know when that'll go, but I am immediately starting some inquiries on that. And in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing, if I add a little bit of happiness to your day or a little bit of spark to your intellect with some of the stuff I write, please consider contributing. At the very least, pass on links to other people, as they say in the mantra of our time: like and subscribe, and share. Okay, that being said, this is my Q&A for today. There'll be another podcast tomorrow on headlines to watch in the coming week or two. And some of them you're going to find pretty interesting. Just a few. There's only a few things I'll be giving you to work with. But I think you'll find some of the stuff I've dug up pretty interesting. That's all for today. This is Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column. I want to thank you for listening and supporting my channel. And please be safe. May the gods bless you and be well. Good day.